Most great players in NBA history are known for their rivalries. Wilt had Bill Russell, Magic had Larry, Jordan hated the Pistons. LeBron James is not known as a trash talker, but throughout his career and 10 trips to the NBA Finals, he has also stepped on some toes and created his fair share of rivalries. Here are the 5 biggest rivals of LeBron's storied career. Number 5. Dirk Nowitzki. LeBron had many rivalries that have flown under the radar, partly because he was winning a lot, without much chance of rebuttal for the most part. He defeated Gilbert Arenas and the Wizards 3 times in the playoffs early on in his career. He dismantled Rip Hamilton, Rasheed Wallace, and the Pistons in 2007 and 2009. When he got to Miami, he had a rivalry with Paul George, but the Heat won all 3 playoff series against the Pacers. And the same is true for the Raptors, with Lowry and DeRozan, who had a rivalry with LeBron, but you can't really say that LeBron had a rivalry with them, because he dominated the Raptors every time. So, even though he only played against Dirk Nowitzki in the playoffs once, it was much more of a rivalry than with those other guys we just mentioned. First, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade mocked Nowitzki for being sick during the finals, which I wasn't a big fan of. And then, LeBron proceeded to play the worst playoff series of his life, averaging fewer points in that series than Dirk, Wade, Bosh, and Jason Terry. It was a total abomination and a big slap in LeBron's face, who didn't leave the house for 2 weeks after the finals ended. Even though he'll never admit that, LeBron wasn't the biggest fan of Nowitzki after the finals, and he wanted to avenge that loss every time he played against him. They played 11 more times after 2011, and James won 10 of those games, and it was clear that defeating Dirk meant more to him than just winning a basketball game. Number 4. Tim Duncan. After he miraculously dragged the Cavaliers to the NBA Finals in 2007, LeBron had no business beating Tim Duncan and the Spurs at the age of 22 with that kind of supporting cast. This is going to be your league in a little while, but I appreciate you giving it to us this year, Duncan jokingly told LeBron after the finals. It was a rare side of trash talk from Duncan, if you can even call it that, but it was hilarious and accurate. LeBron really started to dominate after 2007, while Tim Duncan continued to do what he does best: play great defense, hit bank shots, and give boring answers to reporters. 6 years later, the boring Spurs have made it to the finals again, where they were greeted by the best player on the planet. Even though Timmy was 37 and his mobility was somewhat diminished compared to 2007, he was still Tim Duncan, a big fundamental, and probably the best power forward in the game, even at that age. Timmy made the first team All-NBA that year. That's how good he was. The Spurs also had an all-star in Tony Parker, the always tricky Manu Ginobili, and the rising star in Kawhi Leonard, who showed why he would win 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards in the near future. But thanks to a heroic performance by LeBron and a miracle from Jesus, the Miami Heat won the pivotal Game 6. In Game 7, Tim Duncan missed a potential game-tying layup that he makes 99 out of 100 times, and LeBron James made the mid-range jumper at the other end to clinch the title for Miami. Next year, LeBron and Timmy would go at it again, and James was even better than he was the year before. His jumper was smooth as silk in 2014, and he shot 58% from the field in the entire playoffs, including 52% from 3 against San Antonio in the finals. But the Spurs played the best basketball in the league that year, and it was poetry in motion how they moved with and without the ball. Without enough help and being defended by Kawhi, LeBron couldn't do it by himself, and the old man Duncan had the last laugh. Number 3. Kevin Durant. For the first part of his career, Kevin Durant was always the bridesmaid, never the bride. It was always close, but with no cigar. I've been the second my whole life. I was the second best player in high school. I was the second pick in the draft. I've been second in the MVP voting 3 times. I came in second in the finals. I'm tired of being second. I'm not going to settle for that, Durant said in 2013. Like Kenny Smith, somebody else would run through the tape before him, and it was usually LeBron. All 3 times Durant was second in MVP voting, James had won it. More importantly, LeBron denied him the title in 2012, even though the final series was much closer than a 4-1 score might suggest. KD even outscored LeBron in the finals, with an insane 55% shooting and 40% from 3. But LeBron enjoyed a champagne shower and a parade, and not Kevin. And even though Durant had emerged as a superstar, he would almost always lose to LeBron. KD and Bron played 21 times when Durant was with the Thunder, and LeBron had won 17 of those games, despite their stats being virtually identical. However, the pendulum would swing in Durant's favor after the infamous Players Tribune announcement, which said his next chapter would be with the Warriors. Since he joined Golden State, Durant won 12 out of the next 15 games he played against LeBron, including 2 dominant performances in the 2017 and 2018 NBA Finals. Despite all the naysayers, KD had definitely proven his point against against LeBron, and is arguably the only player who outplayed him individually in the playoffs when both players were in their prime. Number 2. Steph Curry. LeBron was a big fan of Steph Curry. While Steph was at Davidson, when Curry first got to the NBA, James invited him to his house for some bowling when the Warriors played an away game in Cleveland. He outbowled Steph and then defeated him in basketball the following night, probably not fully realizing that this skinny, light-skinned kid would give him major problems in the future. Steph and LeBron shared the NBA Finals stage for 4 consecutive seasons, which provided some of the greatest moments in NBA playoff history. Steph could have easily won the Finals MVP in 2015, despite LeBron's heroics, and receiving votes for Finals MVP despite losing the series. James's finest NBA moment came in 2016 against the Warriors, including multiple 40-point games and that block on Andre Iguodala. Steph and LeBron even traded some trash talk during their Finals runs, both proving that they are not as nice as everyone thinks they are. When KD moved to the Bay, there was almost nothing James could do to stop the Warriors, and that's why Curry is one of the few players that has a better record in head-to-head matchups with LeBron. When KD left, LeBron started winning against Steph once again, defeating the Warriors in the play-in game last season, largely thanks to his clutch three-pointer in the last minute. But because they are in the same conference, the final chapter of his rivalry with Steph, Draymond, and Klay is probably not written yet. Number 1. Paul Pierce. LeBron came to the NBA in 2003, at the time when Paul Pierce was coming off the best year of his career. Pierce was 26 years old. He already was nicknamed the Truth by Shaq, and he was a 2-time All-Star and All-NBA member. So it was only natural that his antennas were already up when the self-proclaimed Chosen One came to the NBA, to his conference, and played the same position. Pierce was determined to show the rookie that he'll have to go through him if he dreams of doing something in this league. After he scored just 10 points to Paul's 19 in the first game against Pierce in Boston, LeBron erupted for 37 when the Celtics came to Cleveland, a career high at the time. However, Pierce bested him with 41 of his own, spiced up with some trash talking towards Otis Carter, Maverick Carter's dad, and someone whom James considers an uncle. "Tell him to be quiet, or I'll drop 50 on you," Pierce allegedly said to young LeBron. During the 2004 preseason, before LeBron's sophomore campaign, Pierce and James nearly had a fight in the locker room after they clashed on the court, and they continued to play extremely tough against each other on every occasion. In 2006, Pierce scored 50 on LeBron in a double overtime game, becoming the first Celtic since Larry Bird to score half a century. James had 43 in that game, though, and got the win, too. 2 years later, this dynamic duo had a clash for the ages in the 2008 Eastern Semifinals. In a pivotal Game 5, James's 35 points weren't enough as Pierce scored 29 points, and Boston took a 3-2 series lead. After James forced a final game with a supreme performance in Game 6 with 32 points and 12 rebounds, Pierce carried the Celtics to a Game 7 victory. He scored 41 points, and the Celtics outlasted James despite Bron's gigantic 45-point game. In 2010, the Celtics and the Cavs met in the Eastern Semis again, and Pierce got the best of LeBron once more. Doc Rivers smartly assigned Pierce as the primary defender on LeBron, and Paul focused all his energy on containing LeBron. Even though he only averaged 13 points to LeBron's 27, Pierce's Celtics and their Big Three were just too strong for James's supporting cast, which forced him to form a Big Three of his own and take his talents to South Beach. After LeBron and the Heat dispatched the Celtics in 5 games in the 2011 playoffs, it seemed like LeBron had finally solved the Celtics puzzle forever and that Pierce would never bother him in the playoffs again. However, after he lost the 2011 finals to Dallas, LeBron was on the brink of another disappointing loss in the 2012 playoffs, after the Celtics took a 3-2 series lead in the Eastern Finals, fueled by Pierce's clutch three over LeBron that decided the game. And then, staring in the abyss of another embarrassing playoff loss to his biggest nemesis, LeBron delivered the best performance of his life. 45 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists as he single-handedly won the game and blew out the Celtics on their home floor. After that, he closed out the series in Game 7 and won his maiden title. But the final chapter of his rivalry with Pierce wasn't written yet, and the two rivals clashed in the playoffs again. It was the 2014 Eastern Semifinals between the Heat and the newly formed Brooklyn Nets super team, powered by Russian millions. But Pierce and KG were too old to provide much resistance to LeBron, who was playing the best basketball of his career. The Heat's 4-1 victory was LeBron's third win over Pierce in the playoffs, compared to Paul's 2 triumphs over James. Altogether, LeBron has won 35 career games over Pierce, who has 34 wins against the King. Because Pierce has the most victories over LeBron than any other player, and because they had so many memorable matchups, he will likely remain the biggest rival of LeBron's career.